Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation today. There's a lot of change going on right now in the fast-moving world of the fourth industrial revolution. Not everybody needs to be a data scientist, but everybody really should be data literate. Really that means the ability to read, analyze, and communicate effectively with data. So in this session, we're going to be talking to my guy, Jordan Morrow, about his new book, Be Data Literate, the data literacy skills everyone needs to succeed. This book is being released on the 30th, right?
Yep, in the US, launched internationally already, but yeah.
30th in the US, yeah. And the reason why I love this book is, I'm a huge fan of everything that Jordan does, but really this book explains how to confidently read and speak the language of data in the modern business environment, really in everyday life. Very, very, very powerful life skills. And so, Be Data Literate is a practical guide to understanding the 4 levels of analytics, how you can actually analyze data, and the key steps to making smarter data-informed decisions. So this book is written by, again, my highest recommendation, it's written by a founding pioneer and worldwide leading expert on data literacy. And this really gives you the tools and skills that you need to succeed in today's digital world. So enough preamble. Jordan, welcome, my friend.
Too much amble, man. Way too much amble.
Well, as you know, I'm a passionate individual, and when you gave me the copy of the book beforehand, I had the opportunity to see it, and I loved it. It just resonated with me on so many different levels. And I was talking with my wife beforehand about it, and she asked a great question, which is really, I hear data literacy all the time, but what is it? For those people that don't know, what's your Cliff Notes explanation on it?
To me, we'll go a simplified version versus I go like a more formal definition. Like simplified version, it's being comfortable and confident in your ability to use data. Now, you said it really well. That's a phrase I've used many times. Not everyone needs to be a data scientist, right? But everyone does have to have comfort using data. You have to have an ability to effectively consume it in your career at this point. 100% of jobs have become data jobs. There's no doubt about that. From the supply chain to the assembly line to the medical field to whatever it is, we all use data at this point. So can you effectively consume data? Now let's go more formal, and it's the ability to read, work with, analyze, and communicate with data. 4 key characteristics that allow us to either read, which means to comprehend, to work with it if you're building a data visualization or doing analysis. Analyzing it, you mentioned it, 4 levels of analytics. Not many people know there are actually 4 levels. Everybody's stuck at level 1, but we have to get them through 2 through 4. And then do you have the ability to effectively communicate with whatever analysis you've put out there? Like if you find amazing insight, but you don't have an ability to effectively communicate with someone, is it going to be lost? And a lot of times I think it is.
Mm-hmm. I love the way that you phrase it there, and kind of to share the story again with my wife. My wife is an accountant, and the analogy that I used to explain it was, if my life depended on it, I couldn't put together a balance sheet or an income statement. But as a part of my job, I know how to use those outputs. And in the same way, you don't need to know all the nuances of APIs and data engineering and data science, all that stuff, but you need to know how to effectively use those outputs in order to make better, more informed decisions. And so that's where, as we'll get to later on in your book, you outline a very clear framework with which to execute on that. But really, I want to take a step back for a second. And, you're known rightfully so as the godfather of data literacy. At least that's what I will always call you. So you're stuck with that. But where did the idea for data literacy come from for you?
So this is an interesting kind of conversation, as we've discussed it before, but years ago when I worked at American Express, now, if the white hair doesn't give it away, I'm old at this point, so let's put it that way. But so at American Express, this is in the early days of self-service analytics, or that democratization, putting data into the hands of everybody. Whereas historically it would sit with a small, concise team. Now we're putting it into the hands of everybody. And it was funny because at that time, the president of the U.S. Consumer Services at American Express, that's their largest portfolio of credit cards, basically told me, Jordan, you're going to do all the training for all the data in the dashboards that you're doing. So I had my data engineers, I was leading this analytical group, and I started to build the training. But it was typical training at that time, all around point and click like this in a dashboard. And then, 7, 8 years ago, that was the norm. That's what everybody was doing. It was at the beginning of this self-service analytics piece. And so as I started to do that, I'm like, well, we're not teaching them how to actually do something cool with the data. I'm teaching them where to click, the drop-down arrow, all of that. Can you actually do something with data? So I actually put together an entire plan around teaching people analytical concepts, basic statistics, all these things. I put that plan together. And my EVP, bless her heart, she's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. I presented it to them, and they just flat told me no. They said, no, the people are not ready for this. Just teach them how to use the dashboards, maybe in the future. And at the time, I didn't know what I was stumbling upon, right? I didn't know that that would become this worldwide thing that is data literacy. But basically, how many people, anybody in this webinar or in your life, think about it, how many of them go to college for a background in statistics, data science, or that thing? Now, we see that increasing, but it's still a very small percentage of people. But if every company is going to consume data, you have to have this ability for everybody to consume it. Because what you see is we democratize these skills out, or excuse me, these dashboards out. People don't have the skills to consume them, and so they don't get adopted. They just sit there. So at the time, so that was my first dabblings at American Express around all my ideas around data literacy. And then they tried to change my job. Well, Click at the time, they had one person there. He's still an amazing friend and colleague. His name's Kevin Hannigan. We didn't know each other, but he had a similar thought that I did. And I applied for this job that had a weird title or a different title. And he basically hired me on my very first phone call. I had to go through the whole process, but he's like, you're the guy for the job. Yeah. And kind of the rest is history. But what was the funniest part about it was my first 11 months there at Click, we never sent an org announcement out to people. We did not tell them I was there because I didn't do anything with the product. I didn't sell anything. I wasn't making revenue. I had this weird idea to create a product agnostic field in data and analytics. And about 10 or 11 months into the job, I was invited to speak at our user conference. I had 5 sessions that pretty much, I think every single one had standing room only. We had to duplicate one because too many people wanted to attend. And that was kind of our proof of concept that this idea that I had created had merit to it. 2 or 3 months after that, well, let me start. 2 or 3 months before that user conference, Gartner, the big research firm, had launched an article all around data literacy. And in July of 2017, Gartner wanted to talk to me because they had launched this paper, but they had no idea some little nerd named Jordan out in Utah was building it and had been building it for months before that article was released. And thus was born the world of data literacy. And I loved it. I mean, it took me around the world. It took me to organizations of all shapes and sizes. Some of my favorites, I was able to speak at the United Nations. I helped the US Olympic Committee. I've helped companies like brand names that you know and see and wear and deal with, all around building these strategies. I love it, man. And I just stumbled upon this. I get asked, I didn't figure anything out. I just had an idea that if the industry was not at the same position and needing help with their employees, then it wouldn't have taken off. It was just lucky timing, I would say, on my part.
The thing that stands out, as we've talked about many times before, I find you to be an incredibly inspirational individual. It's a unique ability to be able to identify opportunities like you did, right? Lots of people see things. Not as many people are willing to take that first step to actually do something. So first of all, your ability to identify the gap in the market, right? The educational opportunity. Second of all, is that you said, this is something that for me, I'm going through myself. You're creating something new. That's a very difficult challenge because you're challenging established norms, ways of thinking. When you brought this out, I imagine at first there was a lot of pushback, as you kind of articulated in your story there.
And I won't name the individual. Well, first off, American Express, they push back. And what's funny is in January of 2019, guess who? I think it was January 2019. Guess who came calling for data literacy help? American Express. A nice little validation point for me is you turned me down a few years before, but now you're calling for help in building that strategy. Internally at Click, there was pushback because you're sitting there building an idea in this world of data that, and I won't name the executive, which executive it was, but there was an executive there who was like, so what? Who cares that you're building this? And now they changed Click's marketing vision to create a data literate world back in I want to say it was in the fall of 2018. And part of it is this feeling of doing the things that are comfortable. Now, you and I chat enough. Neither one of us are okay with that. We're not okay with doing things that make you comfortable. I have a friend that I always say we're expanding our bubble, right? And
Mhm.
to me, why the heck not? Why not just burst through that bubble? Find something that you're passionate about. I mean, you spend how many hours in your career, right? Why not take a shot? Why settle? And I know that that's not necessarily data and analytics. That's more
Mhm.
philosophical overall, but it's my mindset. And so that idea, when I was shot down at American Express, I could have gone one of two ways. I could have said, all right, forget it. You're trying to change my job. I'm just going to go with the change that you're asking. Or I
Mhm.
kept building that idea in my mind. I kept listening and studying and figuring out ways to teach, how to simplify things, very complex concepts like a Markov chain analysis, all the way through
Yeah.
all that to how can I bring this to an individual that allows us to empower them, and not just empower them, but enterprises to
Enterprise. Yeah.
succeed, yeah, to succeed into what literally got forced upon them last year if they weren't doing that. But COVID forced data and digital transformation upon every single organization, pretty much, I would say, in the world. And those that don't embrace it and don't embrace data literacy are going to fall behind.
So, kind of to the point that you mentioned before, you're clearly an innovator. That's what inspires me in every one of the conversations that we have is you think differently. More importantly, you take concrete steps to get there.
Yeah,
With that comes risk. You're ahead of the curve. Sometimes you get the no. What gets me so excited about your book is that for years you've been talking about this and doing this, and this is the moment I think where you're no longer really far ahead of the masses.
mhm,
I think the masses are ready for this, and this is a great tool to help them move along on that journey and bring them along and show them the things that could be. And just really quick tangentially, as we've talked about a lot, the reason why I love this idea and specifically your book so much is because as we talk about, I'm convinced culture is where success with data and analytics happen. You and I both have seen a lot of stuff, and tools and tech alone don't do this. And part of the culture equation is getting the non-technical community to embrace the capabilities that the technical community brings to the table.
100%.
And in order to have that, you need to understand what they're saying. And in order to do that, you need data literacy. And with that comes technological literacy. And so my point with that is we've talked about for the community listening is that this is really foundational to cultural development within the organization, both for the individual, but for organizational success.
Mhm.
So I go on a tangent
So
there, but I wanted
I'll add to that. I get asked all the time, companies around the world. There's a couple of main questions always come up. Is there an industry or a region that is doing better than another? Point blank, the answer is no, not even close. There's not one industry. We're starting to see certain industries take steps ahead, maybe because they have more data, and they, like healthcare is one. Healthcare
yeah,
is doing a lot to shift its mindset around the use of data and analytics, right? So that's just one. So that's one of the big questions. The other one is kind of what you just said, and that is, what is the number one roadblock for data and analytics success? And they focus a ton of time on, is it data cleanliness? No.
no,
Is it your BI tool?
no,
No. Is it your statistics? No. It's your culture. Because the technical people, those who use data, they get it. So that's what they do for a living. They know they need to use it. But you need the adoption of that throughout an entire enterprise or throughout a workforce. It has to permeate throughout it. And most of them don't have that background. Most of them don't care to have that background. They don't want to be the technical. That's not, they chose fields that are not statistics and data science. The
exactly.
problem is, though, the world shifted. And to your point, that's why data literacy now is what it is. And the masses have come up to it is because they're now realizing we can't just hire a few data scientists and get everything we need. We need the workforce there. So that number one roadblock is actually your culture. And to your point, this book is designed in a way that allows each and every individual to understand it. One of the best questions I've had on it, and I felt bad she asked it this way. I was running on a trail with a friend very recently, and in fact, the trail in that picture right over my shoulder there. But
Mhm.
anyway, we ran into a different friend coming up the hill. And her comment was like, congrats on your book. I think I'm too stupid to read it. And that hurts me in a sense, because the way this book was, first off, she should not call herself stupid. But secondly, this book is designed so that every single person will have the ability, when they're done with it, to have more comfort in using data. And that is like the design of what this book is.
As I looked at it, and that's the brilliance, and we'll dig into some of the details here in a second, but that's where, as I read it, if I was starting out in this journey and I didn't know where to go or what to do, anybody who's looking to embark upon this, I tell them, you're going to have to go and get this book or get the Kindle version now, because again, it's intimidating. Like you, I didn't take any formal training in this. I learned it by just getting punched in the face a lot and making a lot of errors. But you learn what to do and more importantly, what not to do. And that's where, with what you've articulated here, it creates, here's what you should do. More importantly, why you should do it. So kind of digging into some of the topics of the book. I guess before I go into the topics of the book is, you have a lot of knowledge. You've had a lot of knowledge for a while. Super smart dude. Why did you decide to do it now? And really, what was your inspiration for doing it now?
Good question. So it didn't hurt that I had a publisher reach out to me and say, hey, we want you to write a data literacy book for us. But the reality, yeah, I mean, that doesn't hurt at all. But the reality is, my first ideas for this book started, I would say, almost probably back in 2018 is probably when, and maybe a little bit before then. And once data literacy started to take off and we started to see what it was doing, I think I had people telling me, but writing a book's always been on my mind, I think, for a long time. And this world that I had helped create is taking off. And I was actually, it's a funny, weird story on how my book thoughts started. And it started on a trip pretty much to Sydney, Australia, as weird as that sounds. I was there meeting with some organizations. I think I was speaking at a Gartner conference, and I had the opportunity to train an individual who flew in from Singapore. So here we are connecting. I'm in Utah, here's Sydney, here's Singapore. None of us had short flights. Anyone who thinks Singapore is near Sydney, it's a 9-hour flight from Singapore to Sydney. So anyway, I took him to dinner, or we met for dinner, and I was there to train him on data literacy. And the gentleman, brilliant, very smart, intelligent guy. He understood it, he got it, he understood why we needed to do this. And eventually he came to me and he's like, Jordan, would you want to write a book on this? I was like, dude, yeah, let's do it. Let's write a book. So this is, I think, in 2018. We hired a coach even. I mean, it was at that point, but it was all self-paced. It was all self-published. He lived in Singapore. I lived in Utah. Our coach lived in Melbourne, Australia. And at that point, he didn't have the background I did in data and analytics. And so for him, time constraints, he had some family things come up. So basically, we kind of took a step back and just said, it just kind of fell to the side, but it never left my mind, obviously. And so then I was speaking at an event to talk about traveling the world. I was in London. And a lot of people probably on this webinar know who Bernard Marr is, one of the biggest voices in data and analytics. And he's become a friend and colleague of mine. He wanted to interview me for his YouTube channel. So I get on the YouTube channel and he's asking me all about data literacy. And this is in, I think, October 2019. So to tell you how long this process takes, that was October 2019 that he interviewed me on video. And in November, I got an email from his publisher. So he's a best-selling author at the same publisher. They emailed me and they said, hey, would you like to write a book? And I was like, well, yeah, that's of course. But then they're like, okay, you still have to submit a proposal that we have to approve. And I'm like, wait, what? You just asked me if I wanted to. So I think it was almost totally approved, but they had to make sure that, and this proposal was like 15 pages long with like 30 questions you have to answer. How many conferences do you speak at? How many followers do you have in LinkedIn? I mean, it was huge. You had to break down the chapters. Now I had the ability to shift them and all that, but the inspiration, I mean, I love this world. If you can't tell on this webinar, you and I, Jason, talk all the time. Data literacy is my baby. I love this world. I love working with enterprises. The thoughts have always been there. And then when a publisher reaches out and says, do you want to write data literacy for us? Well, yeah, it was a no-brainer at that point. So then we put the process in place. And that started my proposal went in December 2019, was approved in January, started writing, I think, in February. COVID delayed it, but manuscript was in about September 9th, I think, or September 4th or something like that. Anyway, and so the rest, I guess, is history. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but sure, why not?
No, it's the start of a journey, man. And you know, it's as I'm talking to people about it, I think there's obviously benefits for a technical community or data community to read it, because it creates a sense of empathy about the challenges that the other side of the table or community has, right? It creates that perspective. But as I talk to business leaders, executives, I strongly encourage them to read this also because it presents these topics, as I've said many times, in a logical, pragmatic manner, but in a non-intimidating and in a non-technical manner. So kind of, if you're cool with it, what I'd like to do is talk about some of like my favorite parts of the
Mhm.
book. Like there's the first part that I came across is the data literacy umbrella.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love this. And really, I'm not going to give everything away here, but really the idea is that data literacy is part of a puzzle. That you place these different pieces of the puzzle under the umbrella. What can you tell us about that idea? Because I think that's a very powerful concept.
Yeah, so when we think of the world of data and analytics has been so inundated that one piece is going to be your solution. You buy this technology, it will solve all your data needs. You clean the data this way, it'll solve all your data needs. You buy this, whatever, it'll solve all your data needs. When in reality, data and analytics, let's put one thing out there. A tool is not a strategy. I want to make that very clear very quickly. A tool is
Amen.
an enabler, right? You and I talk about this, I don't know how often, and we'll commiserate on the phone calls together about it. But the reality is there has to be a holistic strategy that data is there to supplant an organization's overall strategy. That's what it is. It is a part of the business. This is something you say so often, that a data strategy is a business strategy. It's not separate. They need to go hand in hand. So I started to kind of mull over all these ideas in my mind, and it became this overarching umbrella that underneath that umbrella are different puzzle pieces. One of them, and one of the biggest, is data literacy. And that is the training of the workforce to be able to use everything that you're doing. But a part of it is your data governance. It's your data tools. It's leadership. It's training. It's culture. It's technology. It's statistics. And all of these things sit under this umbrella. Here's a good example. Yesterday, I was having lunch with an organization, and our conversation turned to where they wanted to hire basically what I would call a BI specialist, a data developer. And that was their
Mhm.
number one solution to solve all their data needs. And I told them, you need to take a step back. The first hire you're going to make is a data strategist, because the moment that
Yes,
developer keeps going,
100%.
exactly, right? The moment the developer gets going, after 6 months, if he does not have a holistic approach to what your organization's trying to do, they'll be 6 months obsolete. And so they flip the script, and you could just see their eyes go, oh my goodness, that makes sense. So
Mhm.
that's actually what I spend a lot of time on with organizations, is this umbrella idea of what is it that you have under your umbrella? What are you missing out of that umbrella? And what do you actually have a strategy and roadmap to achieve what you're looking to do with data? And so that's what this umbrella is. And each piece of it has different things. Now, each piece could be a book in and of itself, right?
Sure.
To a degree, as you remember reading through it. And this book, of course, was on being data literate. And so that's where the idea of the umbrella came in, is it's to help an organization understand better that you're not going to solve this with a tool. You're not going to solve this by putting governance over your data or cleaning all the data that you're trying to use. You're not going to do that. So let's take a step back. Let's approach it from this holistic umbrella approach, figure out where your gaps are, and then we tackle them. And when you do it that way, first off, the leadership gets it. It makes sense to them on what they're trying to accomplish. And that's
Mhm.
hopefully what came across in the book to you, was each one of these pieces is a puzzle piece. And if you're missing one of them, your puzzle's not complete. It might look pretty good, or it could look completely horrible, but you're missing something that is going to enable your organization to succeed with data.
So, when I saw the umbrella, it clicked right away. I'm like, that's going in, that's lodged in permanent RAM, right?
Sorry, it wasn't
So what,
a better picture. It should have been drawn better at that point. That was, you know,
it's like, did you have your kid draw that?
uh, yes.
No, but it was one of those that as soon as I saw that, it just resonated with me powerfully. And one of what we do is a lot of advisory work on helping companies stand up analytics capabilities. We have a client that will rename unnamed, but they had the same idea. We're going to hire an architect. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
well, how is that architect going to play into the broader strategy? Because what you got to realize is infrastructure and tools with where you're at in your process, that's a quarter of your success. Your
Yep.
rollout, you're rolling it out to people that have zero data literacy. They have zero. In these
Yeah.
particular cases, they were doctors. They don't. They don't deal with no. I mean, they do, but a totally different realm.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, is that it's looking at in the umbrella, where do you need to make those initial investments to get the most out of your investment pool within the landscape that you're working in? If you're working with an audience that is like maybe a CPG in your marketing group or your sales group, whatever, maybe has some inherent data literacy, different, maybe a slightly different playbook, but I think the macro theme that you talked about there is brilliant. And really the umbrella, I like it so much because it breaks it down and says each of these pieces, as you said, independently are important. They need to work together holistically, that you can't look at just the architecture, just the engineering, or just data governance. They need to work together, and that can be intimidating. But by breaking it down into pieces, I also think it makes it more manageable and also manages expectations.
Well, it's the whole thing. You know me. I love to run ultra marathons. You're not going to finish starting at the finish line. It's going to be step by step, right? You're going to have moments of highs, lows, where your strategy works, where your strategy doesn't work, where your nutrition works, where your brain just shuts down. That's the same thing in data and analytics. I use that analogy quite a bit in that you have to figure out what you're doing. And one of the things you said there, I don't want people to miss, is that umbrella fits every single industry.
Everyone.
And then it becomes mapped out to the industry differently based on the needs of the industry. But I think when I get that question, is there an industry doing better than another? I think people think different industries operate in different ways with data. Data is data. It's there. It's numbers, it's letters. It's how you approach it and how you attack it from a strategic perspective that helps the organization succeed. And so what people need to understand with that umbrella, don't ever say, well, this doesn't pertain to me. I guarantee it does. And I could sit down with you and map it out. Figure out, to your point, which areas have gaps. From those gaps, then we can take it and then do something with it.
100%. You know what, just to augment your industry, I'd also say company size. You know, I work with tiny companies up to multi-billion-dollar companies. Sure, there's more data. It's a little bit more complex. It's fundamentally the same, but you know, one of the things that, you know, kind of the theme here is it's a lot and it can be very intimidating. And so, you know, using the book as a backdrop for this, how can people start, and or if they're already on the path, continue their data literacy journey? How do you see that evolution traditionally taking place?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back from all of it and start with something that you and I, we're gym rats, so I'll equate it to that. Like, how many people at New Year's set a goal, I'm going to run, but they hate running. And after 3 weeks, they're done with it. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing within data and analytics. You might hear of something that interests you in that field and you hate it, but you keep pushing it until you don't like it. What I tell people is to start your journey within data, and then I'll get to the book approach. Find something within data and analytics that actually interests you. Whether it's building data visualizations, whether it's statistics, whether it's just being able to read, I don't care what it is. Find something that interests you and then go with it. And then secondly, find a mentor. You and I talk about this, like find someone who knows what they're doing. I get asked all the time to mentor in this field, and I'm more than happy to do it because first off, I feel like, one, I'm nerdy. I love this stuff. So why don't we just teach people about it? But two, I know the benefits that come from it. So now from the book perspective, or just from a journey in particular, I kind of set out 2 or 3 different things to start the journey. That is, what are you trying to achieve? Do you know what outcome you want from this, right? If you don't have a pointed direction in where you're trying to go, it becomes much harder to steer it. Like, you can use an airplane analogy. If your flight is off by just a mere 1 to 2 degrees, by the time you get to your destination, you might be off hundreds of miles. And so what are you actually trying to achieve with your data and analytics? If you can get what you're trying to achieve within data and analytics, then the second step is you can build a learning strategy around it. So I'm trying to achieve X. Now my strategy is Y. And then I can look at Z, which would be what courses do I need to take? What applicable practical examples are out there? What strategies can I do? And again, I will underpin this left and right. Find a person who knows, who's been in that field, and never be shy to reach out, right? I think that's how you and I just started talking one day. Now we're great friends. We talk data and analytics all the time. We help each other. I think that gets lost in this sphere, is that when you have a good mentor within data literacy, do it. And then not to promote the book, but I would absolutely say, get the book. If you're starting your journey within data and analytics, it's written in a way to get you started and excited, hopefully, and that you will see the practical reasons to use data. You're not going to find statistical formulas in there. You're not going to find coding
Yeah.
language there. You're going to find ways that data enhances your life and your career.
You know, as you highlighted there, is it's an easy read in terms of, not that it's not lacking complexity, but the way that you talk about the topic. You take away, and this is a very difficult thing, is to talk about a complex topic in simple manners that people can understand, and you're very skilled at it. And actually, that's how we met. Was I wrote a data literacy article before I even knew what it really was. I was just like, I see this unfolding, and I remember I wrote an article. Somebody, I think you said from South Africa, sent you the article. You reached out, and I was like, I'm trying to learn about this. Will you be willing to teach me? Like, I want to learn. And I remember and then we started just talking, getting to know each other. And that's why I was, again, really impressed with, like, your just progressive thinking, and the way that you were seeing something is like, with the clarity and how much you had been studying. I'm like, this is the future. This is what is coming down the path, and you're a pioneer in the space. I want to learn from you. You know, and one of the things that I'm a really big believer in with this is that these skills obviously have very practical business applications. I apologize, the motion sensors just went off in here. See if I can get it. No, okay. But you know, in the business realm, this is really, really a big deal. But how about outside the business realm? You know, with just a lot of things going on politically, COVID, do skills like this help you disseminate information in that capacity too?
Oh, 100%. I call data literacy a BS detector, right? I mean, it's a very interesting world that we live in. In fact, very early on in the pandemic, I got asked a lot. I think we talked about this, to write about it and to speak about it, to get out there and make my voice heard. And I said, I'm not touching it. It
Yep.
became too heated. It became too much for people. And I said, I'll write about it later. I'll write about it when I can dissect it and get to the bottom of it. And the world we live in, like, I think people get afraid of data when they don't realize they use data almost on a daily basis. If you drive your car, guess what? You're using data to determine, using a data visualization. It's called your gas gauge. It's called your speedometer. Those things are data visualizations that tell you you're either going too fast or you need to fill up on gas. You already use data. I use the example when before COVID, when I'm traveling the world, I would sit there and use my weather app to predict what kind of clothing I would need in that location. There was one trip I took to Finland at the end of November. There's no sunlight during that, and I don't know if I've ever been in a colder spot in my life. And had I not looked at my weather app, I would never have known to bring the extra clothes or the gear or all of that, or to mentally prepare for the fact that I'm gonna have like 4 hours of daylight in a day. All of those things. So people are using data on a regular basis. We all do. So one of the things that I try and teach people is, you're already data literate to a degree. You just don't know it. You're already using data, you just don't know it. So don't separate yourself in your personal life from your business life. Just understand it's just different data to start to dissect and figure out what to do with. So absolutely. Secondly, if you study, so let's go from a practical career perspective. If you study the top trends for desired skills within business, the majority of them have usually in their top 1, 2, or 3 data and analytics skills across the board. You can look at Gartner, Forrester, McKinsey, it doesn't matter which analyst firm you're looking at. Data and analytics skills are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. Data truly drives our economy at this point, right? And you see documentaries come up about it. You see regulations and legal battles coming up about it. The reality is, these skills within data and analytics will propel people to jobs of the future, right? Right now, there's this thing that we do in the world, and it's consistent. We live very reactive lives, right? We're very reactive. This is happening, so I'm going to do this, versus proactive. And what data literacy, to your point a little bit earlier, it was a very proactive approach to where data and analytics was going to go. And so those types of skills, if you build them right, what's fun about that is data and analytics has predictive power. So the more that we build, the more skills that we do, the more proactive that we become within data and analytics, the more marketable we are for our careers. You can see the job desires out there. You can see the job requisitions that exist. So from a personal life perspective, data and analytics is going to continue to build. It's going to continue to grow. The desired skills are there. Just go out and Google data science skills shortage and see what you find. It is massive. And companies, COVID kind of forced it on them to recognize just how gap filled they were. I don't think that's grammatically correct, but we'll go with it. But they realized very quickly their workforce was not ready to deal with the data that was coming in from COVID in an effective way. And they struggled mightily because of it.
I'll tell you, it's one of these things where in just the communities that we come across and the companies that we work with, a lot of people are intimidated by this. And what I tell them is like, they're like, one of the industries we work in particular, like, I've ran my business for 20 years without ever having to use this crap. Their words. Why do I need it now? And they go, well, that's fair. There's an immense value in gut feel, but I think we can also agree that markets, supply chains, everything has been fundamentally upended. So maybe this is a bit of a catalyst to maybe facilitate that growth mindset. But I go, wouldn't it be great to be able to make better decisions with more confidence by augmenting your gut feel with data and analytics? And we have talked about this. Like, I know in what we do, a lot of the value that we create comes from very simple techniques that can be employed by virtually anybody. We're not sitting, sure, we do, regressions and all the technical stuff, but the highest value tends to come from stuff that's accessible to a very wide audience, and it's tools as simple as Excel. It's more around the framework and how you ask questions up front, the questions that you're trying to answer. In small data, people think you got to go and have all this stuff. Man, I'm telling you what, we changed games for organizations using small data, Excel, SQL, basic tools that are very effective. And the point is to them is saying, listen, these are tools that if we just get you down this path a little bit, and you start embracing these tools, and there's a number of people that do this very well in the training regard, and you embrace kind of the framework that you're talking about, you can augment that gut feel in powerful ways and start making better decisions with more confidence. Now, that's not a panacea. Clearly, there's still always chance, all these other things, but you have more information to make better decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what's funny is just take a look back 10, 15, 20 years. How many different things have come along in the data hype cycle that you don't even hear about anymore? Big data was one of them. And now that people realized, oh, it might not be big data, it might be small data, it might be a mix. Hadoop was one of them. How often are you hearing about Hadoop? That was all the rage about 8 years ago. I remember having to learn all about Hadoop and downloading Hive and all of that. So these hype cycles are going to come and go. But the fundamental simple skills of data literacy transform all of that. They actually transcend all of those areas. And so I think that, to your point, like if an organization really wants to set the foot forward and put the pedal down, get your workforce data literate, do it, and then see what they can do for you. Simple, complex, it doesn't matter. They can speak the language of data at that point and then do more.
That's awesome, man. What I wanted to do is I want to be respectful of people's time. We're taking this till 12:50 Central. We've got some great questions here. So you open to taking some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, this one is our buddy David Langer. I thought this was a great question. What should the general expectation of hands-on data skills be for managers within an organization?
It's a great question because you're not looking at the individual contributors at that point. You're looking at leaders of individual contributors. For me personally, when you're a manager or director, VP, or a leader within an organization, you should be comfortable in being able to utilize data. First off, it might not be, I'm not going to say you need to be able to do coding to be able to derive the data or anything. That's why you hire those individual contributors, right? But you should be able to work with it. So let's go with that second characteristic within the definition of data literacy. Do you have an ability to work with the data in a comfortable way to find insight, to analyze it, to extract information, to find trends? Do you have the ability to actually read it? Can you actually look at it? So to me, those leaders, those managers and directors that have, first off, all of them need data literacy skills so they can communicate. You're a decision maker. You're a person that needs to do that. Don't you want more confidence, right? You should want more confidence in your decision-making capability. Utilize data to supplant your instinct. Sometimes your instinct will take over, and that's fine. Sometimes the data will take over. That is also fine. But it should be a key piece of what you're trying to do. So I don't think they need to be too technical. I don't think managers and directors need to be too technical, but you need to be comfortable knowing, being able to talk the talk. You don't have to be the guy doing all the code or the girl doing all the decision making, but you need to be the one who can communicate across those. You do that effectively from a hands-on perspective and be able to manipulate the data and the visualization, you're going to be a very marketable leader. There's a position that's out there that you're going to know very quickly when I say it. You're going to be a data storyteller. A data storyteller is the individual that bridges the gap between the data and technology and the business, right? For so many years, those things did not communicate together very well. And so it caused problems, tension, or whatever. McKinsey predicts by 2026, 2 to 4 million jobs in the United States alone will be created around these data storytellers. 2 to 4 million jobs. Now, those people, every single manager should be able to be a data storyteller. They should be able to communicate, to bridge that gap, to be able to get in the data a little bit. That right there will set them apart, because a lot of managers, I can tell you now, they can't. That they're not at that level.
100%. To your point, and the thing that we talked about, culture. That's where change happens. That's where you influence people. That's where you persuade people. That's where you create the clarity of vision of what could be. We want to go, we're here, we want to go here. Here's how we're going to get there. And data is a part of that narrative. And so I would say it's a fundamental part of management as you go forward, right? It's one of those that, in the same way that, 20 years ago, if you could use Word or Excel or the internet, people put that on their resume.
Absolutely.
Well, you put that in a resume now, people are laughing out of the room because, yeah, everybody can do that, right?
Standard.
I think data literacy is going down the same path in terms of you can communicate proficiency with numbers today, and that's a differentiator. I think in very short order, it's going to be like, yeah, everybody's expected to do that,
Yep.
And that's where, kind of to your point, I think we're in the early innings of that game, but I think that day will definitely come. And kind of, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, there was an organization, one of the largest healthcare organizations in the U.S. A question was posed to me by a couple different people about that organization, who I don't know why they didn't come to me. I think they went through their reps, then the reps came to me. But their question was, should we make data literacy a job requirement? Every candidate that comes into our company, should that be a requirement? They asked the wrong guy. I'm the data literacy guy. Of course, my answer is yes, right? But if you dive into it, and if you actually look at what this organization, they're ahead of the curve, in my opinion, within healthcare when it came to data. What they wanted, not necessarily technical skills, again, that's not what they're looking for. What they were wanting was people and candidates who had a comfort with data. So of course, yes, that to me, 100%, and you're starting to see that happen. That was 3 years ago, maybe, and now you're starting to see that happen more and more and more, where companies are making that a job requirement in there. It might be worded differently, but you can see it. You can see it happening.
This is off topic, but it's kind of paradoxical in my mind, because in my mind, the traditional academic institutions do not necessarily prepare people the best for this mindset. They train them well in the tools, right? The theory. How do you? Yeah, I mean, like that's the question. I don't know. I don't have an answer, because I know for guys like you and I, that expertise was born from real world experience. But
Yeah.
how do you see that unfolding in the future? Can academic institutions effectively teach these topics?
I think they can, and I've been pulled into conversations, if you will. In fact, done workshops with deans and professors and stuff. The reality is, it's kind of interesting. So when I get asked to mentor college age people, the question comes up like, what should I be studying? And oh, what's your undergrad in? It's in statistics or in data science or computer engineering, whatever. I said, your major, your school is going to teach you fine on the technical stuff. Let's go study skills. And we study communication. We study leadership. We study the ability to have interpersonal relationships. All the things that when you tell that to them and then explain why I'm suggesting those sort of classes, the light bulb goes off. I'm like, because we could teach you the technical things left and right. I could send you to YouTube right now and teach you how to do regression analysis to give you a good idea how to do all that. Can't do that like communication. And so the degrees that are happening in the academic world right now are on the more technical side. You will start to see, and you're starting to see it permeate a little bit through schools, and I think it's going to get bigger, these softer skills on the data side of things. Those are the most valuable ones. I don't care how good you are at statistics. If you cannot lead people and you cannot communicate effectively, all you are is a person who can do statistics, and you're not moving the needle for your company. And so what we have to do is then permeate and bring in and evolve the skills to have the soft skills be a part of it. And so you do see it. So I do see it changing. It might be a slow roll, but it's going to happen more and more and more. And we are starting to see it in certain areas, but there is still a massive heavy lean on all the technical side of this.
Yeah, I echo that. And that's actually part of the reason why my organization is starting to embrace upon training content around these topics. Just to your point, as we've talked about and I think articulated here, I'm convinced that's where enterprise level success happens. But not only that, these are also the skills that help data scientists more effectively, or whoever, or even the business community to understand the data realm, to understand basically it serves as a communication link to enable things to happen better, faster, more effectively and efficiently, and that benefits everybody.
Absolutely. And it goes to the question of what's the number one roadblock? It's the culture. You want that culture to succeed, don't throw technical skills at people, throw soft skills at people, and then you'll start to see the shift happen.
Absolutely. So I got one more question for you, and it's one of those you've kind of already answered it, but we kind of got here through the conversation, but ultimately in your mind, what does success look like beyond the bounds of what you've already described in kind of the top level definition? How do people know, like, I get it?
Yeah, so this is one that's going to have a funny answer because there is no definitive answer, right? I think I've been asked, how do we know when we've arrived? Well, the moment you think you've arrived, you've fallen behind. It is an ongoing thing. New technologies become present. New forms of data become present. New ways to analyze the data become present. New ways to communicate with the data become present. It is an ongoing journey, always iterative. It's not going to be, I learned XYZ, I'm data literate. No, I'm fine. I helped create the world's first data literacy certification. But what I would always tell people, or I still tell people, is it's just a step. There are many facets of that umbrella. Think about that umbrella we're talking about. They're always changing, they're always shifting. Before March of last year, companies thought they were probably doing really well being data-driven. The world shuts down into COVID and they realize very quickly we're not as data-driven as we think. It's ongoing. So success, what I would say is you'll start to feel more success when you start to feel comfort in getting insight from the data, being able to make a decision with the data. That right there is data literacy success. And you're already having success because you didn't run out of gas yesterday as you drove home, right? You ran out of gas, let's talk, because we don't want that happening. But you didn't run out of gas. So you're already having success with data. Now, is it learning a new data visualization? Perfect, there's more success. Is it learning how to interpret that visualization? More success. Studying a book like mine or Nancy Duarte's Data Story to communicate? More success. Build upon it though. Like winning feels good, right? Success feels good. Don't ever sit there and think I haven't made it. If you're progressing, you're progressing. If you're growing, you're growing. And in data literacy, you will never arrive. The moment you think you've arrived, then you and I are going to have a talk. And so it's more about, are you progressing? Are you iterating? Are you finding new things, new techniques, new ways to do things, new ways to communicate? Did you find a new mentor that you're working with? All of those things are data literacy success. So to me, it looks like you're always progressing forward. If you're doing that, you're being successful.
It is a journey, my friend. And, as you're looking for a map on that journey, I think your book is an outstanding resource. I know we're up on time. I want to thank everybody for their time today. Jordan, thank you so much for your time, Dominator. I appreciate it. Wish you nothing but success. And the numbers already show you've already got a hit on your hands. It's just going to go up from here. But I'm happy for your success, my man. And thanks again for providing a great resource to community. And to everybody that's watched us, thank you very much. If you haven't already, go out and get his book. Trust me, you'll have no regrets. Make it a great day, everybody.